Drink your juice, Damon.
Oh, no. I literally just agreed to do Steel Magnolias 2 seconds ago, and the minute you said that, I was like, oh, this is going to be rough.
Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good. My name is DJ.
My name is Damon. Hello, DJ.
Now,
how have you been?
Well, howdy to you.
Oh, Clary, is that you?
Go, come on in. I got some sweet tea over here for you.
It's viscous, Clary. Why is the sweet tea doesn't come out immediately? I'm holding it at a 90-degree angle, but it's still sort of slowly coming out like molasses out the pitcher.
It's hot as molasses and slow as molasses. We love molasses.
Hot. Now, I didn't catch. I mean, I'm from Alabama, so I'm not as familiar with the term hot as molasses. Can you unpack that for me?
We're talking about Steel Magnolias. Famously, in my family, the movie that had my mom and my aunt and probably my sister, I can't remember if she was there too, sobbing. And me being, I don't know what, we were like 8 or something, 7 or 8 when this came out, just being very confused as to what was going on.
I want to watch He-Man.
Yeah, it was like, there's not any action scenes in this entire movie. 0 fighter planes, 0 karate. This is bullshit.
I also had a mother who was affected emotionally by this movie. I remember we rented this a lot. I think we talked in, what was the last movie we talked about where I said this? It was one of those movies that we rented a lot. Oh, like Stargate. We rented this movie a lot on a regular basis. Mom absolutely loved Steel Magnolias. I thought of it as a mom movie, but it was also one of the ones that I actually liked, so I watched it a lot. I really identified with Weeza, who's Shirley MacLaine's character, who... per the line in the movie, she's been in a bad mood for the past 40 years. But it was a fun movie. It also is a prime example of play dialogue because it is an adapted play. So it's definitely got that play feel where they're just constantly at the same set they got set up over here.
Well, and they like over dialogue a bit, right. Where you're like, you say things where like we were making fun of a second ago. Well, come into the house that's right here. Sit down on that sofa. Kick your feet up. Like, just like if it was not adapted from a play, you would just come in and sit down.
Well, how's your small business going that you've been running for the past 6 years?
This also reminds me, because I don't even know if sweet tea is involved in this, but it feels like it because it's, set in the South End. It always reminds me of our bit that we had when we were roommates, which is that there's a brand of sweet tea called Milo's, and we used to always call it Milosh because it's spelled the same except for without the apostrophe, and pretend we were a Russian pretending he was from Alabama selling this sweet tea. It was some sort of, I don't know what the grift was, but clearly it was some sort of.
Well, I mean, I think he was just trying to convey his southernness because people wouldn't want to buy, sweet tea from a Russian man named Milosh. So he's like, "Hello, I am Milosh. Please have my sweet tea. I remember growing up in Savannah, my mother Desiree would make this sweet tea while we fanned ourselves with those fans that you would get in your Presbyterian churches."
With full Arnold there.
It's swung into Schwarzenegger really quick.
My
sister
Katya would be coming back from standing in the bread line. I mean, going
debutante
to the local fair.
Line.
Anyway, that's not anything to do with this movie. So we got, you already mentioned Shirley MacLaine. We got the dearly departed Olympia Dukakis.
Yes.
Our tribute.
This is part of the Olympia Dukakis trilogy that I declare as Moonstruck, Steel Magnolias, of course, and Look Who's Talking. Oddly enough.
I'm sure she'd appreciate that. You sort of encapsulating her career in those.
Godspeed, Olympia.
And Julia Roberts, obviously. Is Sally Field in this?
Sally Field is in this.
Sally Field, a.k.a. my mom.
AKA, I mean, she is, of course, the namesake for the Sally Field Award that we give out sporadically on this podcast for, what is it, best scene in a movie?
Yeah, one single scene for her work in Mrs. Doubtfire. The whole time. I believe
she has a Sally Field, at least nominated, Sally Field Award nominated scene in this movie.
Oh, okay. Good. That'll be exciting for her.
She'll finally win that award she has her name on.
I know that at least for a period of time, Sally Field was America's mom, but she sort of looks like my mom. And so I cannot help but picture her. And she always plays like sort of matronly roles. Like that's kind of like
Mary Todd Lincoln, for example.
Right. Yeah. I mean, technically.
We also have, I said Shirley MacLaine, Dolly, Daryl Hannah.
Oh, yeah, Dolly's in this.
Come on, what the fuck? Yeah. She's the one with the sweet tea. It's her hairstyling salon.
That's right.
I feel like we're missing someone in there. Tom Skerritt. Could that be who we're missing?
Is he the husband?
He's, Sally Field's husband.
Okay. I feel like I have also seen this play.
Oh.
I think it was a college production that my friend was in, but I'm trying to remember, but I could be conflating it with a different, because I think I also saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest there. So that might be, I might be conflating two different experiences.
I confuse those two a lot. Because they both involve a Native American smothering someone to death. That's why I think of them together. Sorry, Dolly.
Once again, Olympia Dukakis doing masterful work.
Dolly, when she smothers you, just turn your head slightly and you'll be able to breathe fine.
Yeah,
thanks, honey.
We want a stage smother. But all I remember, okay, obviously spoiler if you haven't seen this, but I remember Julia Roberts dies, right? That's
she does die of diabetes.
Yeah, so that's Drink Your Juice. She has she goes into insulin shock, and then would you please tell them the other bit that lives on forever? The Drink Your Juice Shelby bit. Well.
Wait, what is the bit? Is the bit not just saying "Drink your juice, Shelby"?
Well, so we used to live off of a street called Shelby Avenue. Our Nashville listeners will know what we're talking about. This. And every time we go to it, we would say Shelby Avenue. But your friend Jeff, I don't remember if you told me about it or if I was in the car when this happened, but we would say that, and I think he was very much into that. Or he might have started it.
Jeff loves a joke that eventually just works its way into his bloodstream, so that even if you just turn on to Shelby, there's a complete lull in the conversation. No one is talking. You'll just hear him mutter under his voice, "Drink your juice, Shelby.
Drink your juice, Shelby." And then, so Shelby turns into a different street when it turns into Korean Veterans Boulevard. So we would take it and then say, "Drink a juice, Korean Veterans." So stupid. I don't know if this is worth telling you, everyone.
I do love it, though. Drink your juice, Korean Veterans. I have cookies. No, juice is better for Korean veterans.
Thank you for your service. So, is that the big cry moment? Is that why I thought my mom and my aunt were dying when we watched this? Because
well, I mean, that is the big climax, is that Julia Roberts' character dies, and then Sally Field gets what I think will be, I'm not showing my hand, but what I think will be a Sally Field Award nominated scene at the graveyard.
Okay.
She gets to cry, which is one of Sally Field's many talents.
This is the one where they're at the funeral and Sally Field's having her speech, but then Peter Parker walks away, realizes that he can't be with MJ because he'll always put her in danger.
Because of his responsibilities.
With the power and whatnot.
No. I can't believe, you're really embarrassing yourself. This is the one where Sally Field is there, of course, and it's right after she gets married to Axl Rose, and one of the guests dives into the cake, and then it immediately smash cuts to Julia Roberts' funeral. Sally Field's there. She's wearing a very long, black trench coat, but she's got a white bandana around her head because, she's mourning. And you never know what Julia Roberts died from, but she is in a casket that splits her in half, so there's like a weird mirror effect, and it's very mysterious. Like, what happened? Did they throw acid on Julia Roberts? It's great. And then Slash has that great solo outside the church. Solo, but it's not the same church, so you're like, did he travel to a different church?
I appreciate you trying to correct me, but actually this is the one where Sally Field is standing at the funeral, and she sings "Dust in the Wind" and says, "You're my boy, Blue." And it's very funny. It's very funny.
It's funny because, Julia Roberts was so old. Her character was so old in this that you knew eventually she was gonna die.
Right.
She was just too old to be in a fraternity. Part of the comedy was that she was so old and in a fraternity.
The very idea of befriending an elderly man is comedy. I think we know that.
I'm out of funerals.
Yeah, there's that one that was like a funeral. Sally Field was there, and then there's also 4 weddings, but I don't know much about the details of it. Okay, so we're gonna watch Steel Magnolias. I think I'm going to make a little prediction here, because this was definitely one I dismissed as a kid. Like, this is a girl movie, and I was young enough where it was more just understandable that I would do that. But I also think I'm going to enjoy this because I think that is a gifted slate of actresses, and I think
Scarrett's.
I actually and Tom Scarrett's. Generally speaking, the sort of like emotional heartstring pulling movies, even though I know I'm being manipulated, I'm kind of here for it. Like the family love, the togetherness, the unity, especially after
the insulin,
the hard past year or so that we've had. Like, that's gonna get me. I guarantee it.
Guaranteed. Yeah, I have a feeling. It's been probably maybe 10 years, maybe even more, since I've seen this movie. I feel like there is a gay Olympia Dukakis movie divide, north and south, much like the Mason-Dixon line. There's the Moonstruck North and the Steel Magnolias South.
Oh, and never betwixt shall mingle?
I don't know if they, there's probably a few Kentuckians who split up, who went up to Moonstruck, and some went down to Steel Magnolias.
That's actually how New Line Cinemas started, because there was Line Cinemas, and then they wanted to join
a new line.
They wanted to join Moonstruck.
Stupid.
So stupid. Is anyone following? Is anybody left that's following what we're talking about?
I've fallen onto the Moonstruck divide, but so it's been a while since I've seen Steel Magnolias. But I do think I'll love it. I still remember lots of it. So fucking cut the verdict now. Cut the verdict now. Who cares?
On this may be a reason to talk in a different movie or in a different episode, but I've never seen Moonstruck. So.
Oh, it's so good. Maybe we can save that for Valentine's Day.
Oh, Valentine's. All right, we're going to watch Steel Magnolias. Watch along with us. We'll be right back. Damon.
Oh, Southern DJ. I'm sorry. I thought Ohio DJ was here, but Southern DJ, I welcome you to the show. How are you?
Your podcast hosting is slicker than snot on a doorbell.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say it.
I think I might have been the first person to say those words in that order.
Now, what part of the South are you from? Because your accent sort of comes in and out, doesn't it?
Well, I'm from Chim Cham Parish, Louisiana.
Yes. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite of the parishes.
One of our favorite things to do down here was to eat the heads off of crawfish.
Yeah.
And then skitter on over to patreon.com/Your Inner Child's an Idiot and support the podcast of our choice, which is which is Your Inner Child is an Idiot. I forgot the name of the podcast for a second there. Well, that's how much I love it. It's second nature to me. I don't even need to think about it.
Much like, other states might call them counties, but we call them parishes. This podcast is called Your Inner Child is an Idiot. Up above the Mason-Dixon line, but down south, it's just called Bless Your Heart.
That's probably an actual...
you like that movie, Bless Your Heart?
That's probably an actual other podcast. So just stick with Your Inner Child's an Idiot because most people will know what you're talking about, and we'll just be our little secret, okay?
We couldn't get the 301 redirect from Bless Your Heart over to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, so just stick with that one.
Patreon.com/Your Inner Child's an Idiot. And we are back. We're back from watching Steel Magnolias, Steely Mags,
as they call it.
You
Do you remember when Shaquille O'Neal was in Steel? And then
that was a sequel to this one.
Footnote Magnolias.
Yeah. Right. Steel, Magnolias. This is the sequel.
The sequel.
I forgot Daryl Hannah was in this one.
Oh,
that was a surprise.
Big Daryl movie for her.
Just before we even get into it, we need to recap this movie. But my claim to fame, the reason I'm most famous, I walked by Daryl Hannah once in a hallway. So,
and what did you say to her?
Absolutely nothing.
Loved you in Splash, Daryl.
I didn't actually recognize her because she looks much different. I'm not gonna say anything other than that because I don't want to. I'm sure it's difficult to be an aging actress.
Is this because she had her eye removed surgically for Kill Bill?
Yes. And, it was an artistic choice and I respect it. Please recap this movie. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh, hello.
As your employer, I'm asking you to do this for me.
Well, Steel Magnolias, 1989, opens with some various shots of beautiful, beautiful southern homes built by someone, and we are open on the wedding day of Shelby. She's marrying handsome man number one, Dylan McDermott, and Sally Field is her mother. Tom Skerritt, fresh off the Nostromo, back home on Earth, is her father. But she needs to get her hair done before her wedding. She heads over to Trudy's beauty spot. Trudy. Oh, Truvy. Sorry, my bad.
You were using an actual name.
I bought a hammer at a Truvy back when they used to have them, but then they got bought out by Ace Hardware.
And then it's like Aces Truvies. It's like, what are you doing here?
Truvies Ace Hardware? Is it Aces or is it Truvies?
Just be the new name. It's fine. Listen, Ruth's Chris. What is that?
Most of this movie takes place in Truvy's beauty spot, and we follow up with Shelby, of course, her mother, Malin. Malin.
Is it May Lynn that gets shortened to M''Lynn?
I don't know if the playbill went into that.
Okay, all right.
And then, of course, eventually we meet up with Clary, the former first lady of the town in which they live. Of course, Truvy, played by Dolly Parton. We have, what's Daryl Hannah's name?
What is her name? Nell?
Yes, Nell. And then eventually, of course, we meet the richest woman in town, Weasel. Played by Shirley MacLaine. The important thing is that Shelby is diabetic, and like any diabetic you've met in your life, that is a death sentence for her. So eventually, we're just counting down the minutes, and she gets married to Dylan McDermott, and eventually, a few months later, she comes back and gets her hair done for another purpose. We find out that she can't have children. Then a few months later, she comes back for Christmas. We find out she can have children, or she is going to have a children, but she shouldn't have a child, according to her doctor. We also find out she's on dialysis. She decides to get her hair cut real short a few months later, so she's back at Truvy's beauty spot, and
gets a kidney transplant from
Malin. The transplant doesn't take. A few months later, we find out, and she dies. Malin is very sad and gets a very Sally Field dramatic scene. Will it win the Sally Field Scene Award? I don't know. We'll just have to see at the end of the podcast.
Stay tuned for several minutes.
And all the women realize they've bonded so close just by having their hair cut together.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
There's a new Shelby.
Oh, and Nell goes through various stages of Christianity.
Yes. Well, and then she has a baby, and she's going to name it Shelby.
And it's the second life.
Sung by Dolly Parton in this version.
That's a good Dolly Parton impression, though. I gotta hand it to you.
In the circle.
Get a chuckle in there. That's a classic.
She's got like one of those like super warbly. Dolly Parton's amazing. She's a national treasure. She has that.
Please don't
super fast
don't
vibrato. Dylan McDee's in this. First thing I just want to immediately, as a wedding professional, I just had to say, you got to really space out your vendor load-ins better than this. Everybody's just zipping in all at once. The flower people are there, and they're like tripping over the cake, and everybody's like, guys, you've got a day. Start early.
Yeah, of course.
You're going to want to get your decorations there, probably one of the first things, because everything's going to have to go around, Flowers maybe a little bit later, because you don't need first of all, as I can tell you, you don't need the band setting up. Flower people who are all doing a great job, by the way, not to denigrate their profession, but...
Catherine, you're doing great.
If they get there first, they're staging all over the stage. They're staging their flowers.
You want to stage the stage properly. So otherwise, it's not a stage.
It's ridiculous.
Let me ask you now, again, as you are a wedding professional, you want to get your decorations in, maybe then the flowers, maybe do, a mic check with the band. When do you fire guns into the trees to get rid of parasitic birds? You're
going to want to do that as the guests are arriving. So this is based on a play, as we discussed. And I was reading, I don't remember the play that much, so it's just what I was reading. So
have you ever seen the play?
I actually have.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember it that well. And it was like a college production. So I don't think
They say that's the Broadway of the academic world.
I don't think it was especially bad, but it was not especially good either.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the men aren't actually in the play.
Yeah, there are no men in the play.
At length. But so, Scarrett just bringing all of the character color to this.
Bringing all the dick into this.
Yeah.
I assume that in the play there are gunshots going on off stage. Is the feeling I got?
I don't know. I don't remember that. But
the play also all takes place at the beauty spot, correct?
The beauty spot.
I like to stop at the beauty spot. That's what it's called.
It's called the beauty spot. Oh, is that the name of it?
Beauty spot.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just like saying beauty spot
because I couldn't remember the word salon,
shop, or something. Yeah.
Coming on down to the beauty. I don't know. It's like a place. It's a location. It's like a spot.
Come to the hair domicile. Dolly's let's go ahead and talk about Dolly. So she's extremely charming. She's a national treasure. No one can.
I believe she would say treasure.
Treasure. No one can say a bad thing about her.
But you're about to, is the feeling I get.
No, I just want to be honest, because I do love Dolly. I think she's brilliant. I think she's an incredible business person. She's an incredible musician, singer, writer, philanthropist.
Yeah. What about actor?
She's okay. She doesn't actively wreck anything, but sometimes, and she's not the only one in this movie, so it's not like it's her fault either, but she is one of the actresses that most makes this feel like I'm watching a play. And it's like delivered in a little bit. Now, she has just a lot of natural charisma that
she has charisma to fucking burn.
Yeah, so she overcomes a lot of that, I think, by just being Dolly. And you're like, yeah, I like her. That's cool. And therefore you like Truvy, because it's like, yeah. But
there's not a lot of sunlight between Truvy and Dolly.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think, apparently the director of this movie, where I was reading.
I mean, aside from $1 million, I just realized like millions upon millions of dollars. That's the only sunlight that there is.
Yeah.
A lot of financial sunlight, charisma sunlight, not as much.
But I just want to get that out there, because I do think, and I think that people may be mad because everybody loves Dolly, and I also love Dolly, but I just want to I just think we got to be honest. She's not the strongest actress ever.
Well, this is one of those times where, it's good that we are in the middle of a pandemic, because I would skin you alive if I was anywhere near you. How dare you impugn
this is a Sandy Bullock moment, isn't it?
Of Dolly Parton. No, actually, I'm on the same page as you. It's very hard to realize, but I think this isn't my first time watching this particular rodeo, and I think there are a few times where I'm like, why is she saying it like that? I think the line that stuck out to me was that they were sort of gossiping about a Nell. Dara Hannah's character is a Christian who goes in and out of how horny for Jesus she is throughout this movie. And
she's finding her way.
At one point, she becomes a little bit more evangelical, and they're all sort of gossiping about her. And Dolly's talking about Nell's boyfriend, and I think Dolly says, well, I knew he knew that he wasn't going to be the only man in her life, but I don't think he realized that she was going to have the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And to me, like, it was like this just really quick read of what is a funny line in that it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Like, it's these three other men.
Do you see?
But she just sort of cruises through it, and it's a very nitpicky thing to like get into because she is Dolly Parton and she just has so much charm to her that it's hard to hold it against her. But there are a few times where she very much feels somewhat stilted. But there is part of me that does hold that more against the fact that we are watching an adapted play, adapted by its own playwright. Is that not the case?
Yeah, I think so.
Rather than Dolly, because like she has a lot to do in those first scenes when Nell appears for her first day of work, where it's Dolly is just like talking at great length about a variety of characters we won't meet, just sort of like establishing her as sort of a little bit of a town gossip.
Yeah, as you'd expect from the town.
Me and Tyler, in that speech, she has a line talking about some other woman. Her whole life has been an experiment in terror. Was one of Dolly's lines. I just think she has a lot to do as sort of like she's not the star of this because it's very much an ensemble piece, but she's like
definitely carrying the exposition of the first
a lot
act
of like plot weight is put on Dolly's shoulders, and I don't know if that's really her strength. No matter what Christmas on the Square on Netflix would have me believe.
One, like, so to be fair to Dolly, like, she gets the bulk of that first, but we also get Daryl Hannah right after that, and then we get Julia Roberts coming in, and then and Sally Field, and they help lessen the load, but it's not until Shirley MacLaine appears as Weeza that you're like, oh, she's amazing, and part of it's the character. Like, she comes in, but it's just like
she is sort of given the broadest. Well, I mean, Olympia Dukakis' character of Clary and then Shirley MacLaine's character of Weeza are sort of the broadest characters, and they're also both kind of comic relief characters.
But and Olympia Dukakis, God rest her soul, is doing like a genteel Mae West the whole time. She's like, oh, why don't you,
why don't you come up and see me sometime at my plantation home?
What was that? What was the thing she says? If you ain't got nothing nice to say, come sit next to me. And at first you're like, At first you're like, oh, that's funny, and then she just like, oh, she's gonna do every line like that.
Yeah. So you're like a drag queen? Is that the idea here? I would say though, I think Dolly has a lot of charm to burn, so I don't hold as much against her on this. But Julia Roberts sort of plays the heart of this movie, Shelby, and first off, if the Southern accents got any stronger in this movie, they would get up and walk around and pour themselves a sweet tea. Like, it starts to border on ludicrous. But I have to say that maybe Julia Roberts is the absolute worst Southern accent in this. It's very much like the pretty girl got cast in the school play, and she plays a Southern woman, and it's so out of control with the accent that I like sometimes I had to pause it and just take a break because I was starting to break a sweat. Like, it was too much.
Well, and she and this is not, I don't think Julia Roberts did this badly, but the character of Shelby is not all that likable. Like, you feel sympathetic to her, but she's kind of like, she's charming because Julia Roberts has some natural charm too, but like, she's kind of
hard pass on that one.
Well, I just think like she's kind of a whiny bride to be, like, at the beginning, and then you kind of like her spitfireness, like, because she's like, having a child is really important to her, so she decides it's like worth her health risk to do it. But you don't. There's a little bit too much telling, not showing of that, of like her like caring. She's just like, I care about this, and they're like, did you care about this? I don't know. I just didn't get.
Well, I think part of that is maybe just the structure of this story, in that I mean, the impression I get is that the play is, every few months pass and everyone returns to the hair salon to get their hair done, and then they recap everything that's happened. That's at least the impression I've gotten.
Yeah.
And then this movie fleshes it out a little bit more, but still that is the core of how this story progresses, is that every few months everyone goes to get their hair done at Truvy's beauty spot. My thing with Julia Roberts is that I wonder, having watched this, if that my vibe on her is that she is a brat. Her character is kind of a spoiled brat. Yeah. And I can't tell if that is something that is part of the play, or if that is something that her character is now sort of is colored a little bit in just like the time we live in now, where we are familiar with bridezillas. We're familiar with, the white lady who wants this type of wedding where she has two very distinct, at least in her eyes, colors of pink, and pink is her wedding colors. And she seems a little bit of a brat, and like kind of, I mean, somewhat in a realistic way. Like, she's very young. The impression I got was that she's in her very early 20s in this when she gets married. And, she's always sort of fought with her mom. And that's another instance in the movie where I agree with you that, like, it was a lot of, like, telling me how she likes to fight with her mom more than, like, actually showing me. Although we do get a lot of her being snarky with her mom.
Yeah.
But I think, though, the introduction we get to it is, of course, the famous scene where she has, when her insulin drops and they have to get her juice. Or it's not that she has her insulin drops. She has too much insulin. She hasn't eaten, is the impression I got. Yeah. Was that she hadn't eaten, and so they get some juice in her system to counterbalance the insulin. But she, like, turns into a brat, like, instantaneously upon, her episode starting. And, I mean, that might be true to life, but it was this weird moment where she just starts, shaking her head and scratching at her hairdo, and she won't drink her juice, for example. Hence why she has to be begged to drink her juice, Shelby. I don't know. I had trouble like connecting with her character because I went to school in Tennessee. I know many a girl who wanted her blush and bashful wedding to be as large and as filled with white people as Shelby's was, and so she kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. She probably left a bad taste in my mouth at the time, but I think as time has gone on, Shelby is less and less a likable character, and I'm hesitant to say that mostly because I know that the playwright based Shelby on his sister. So I don't want to bash her too much because I don't know how true to life she is. But she wasn't a character that I really wanted to spend much time with because she did seem like a brat.
I mean, you do see Malin being like pretty overbearing, and not just in the, like, you see her being kind of overbearing, and then you see why, because she's overprotective, because she's physically got these issues that have been, I'm sure, a real struggle for her up to this point. But before that, you see Malin say, I can't even remember what she says. All I wrote was, "Why would you tell everyone that, Mom? Holy shit!" That's what I wrote down. What was I talking about? I don't remember. No idea. But yeah, we see her kind of being overbearing, but then we immediately get, or like shortly thereafter, we get Shelby's attack, her insulin attack or insulin shock. What is it? I don't remember what it's called. We should probably get into that. Like, I don't know a lot about type 1 diabetes, but apparently some people in the diabetic community do not appreciate this because it's like shows like a worst case scenario because there are I know many people with type 1 diabetes that have managed it, but it's also in an earlier time when there was not that like 1989 was centuries ago, but there's a lot of things that have come a long way as far as the treatment of it. So, I don't want to speak like I'm super like an authority on it either, but I know that there's been some complaints about this.
Right. Yeah. It does seem like this isn't necessarily unrealistic, but it is the worst possible. It's a worst case scenario. And I think because the movie and play were so popular, it became very synonymous with diabetics in a way.
Almost as much as The Truth About Stacey.
Of course.
The Babysitter's Club.
Actually, another woman sentenced to die at the end of her story.
I think that was actually, we were talking about this, like the Stacey storyline in the Babysitter Club is actually a bit more realistic because they talk about how she's like, well, she goes to the doctor and then she treats it this way and she can't do this and she has to just monitor her intake and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, But
Well,
it's
and
also, like,
it has that aspect of like a helicopter mom being very paranoid about her daughter being diabetic, and Stacey's like, "Look, I got it.
Right.
Just stop like hovering over me and let me live, whatever semblance of a normal life, whatever that is that I can, but don't like hover over me."
Right.
But of course, Stacey's kidneys weren't also failing.
Right. Yeah, it's clearly she has like other health struggles. She just kind of has some issues that exacerbate all of it.
Right. And I feel like the movie also doesn't go into make an effort to differentiate those troubles, that not only does she have diabetes, but she has this kidney issue that seems to be a problem that causes her to have to get dialysis. That is kidneys, right?
Yes.
Your Honor? Okay. And then, I mean, diabetics give birth to children on a regular basis.
Right.
I assume. So, I think it's almost like a movie that's cursed by, or not even a movie that's cursed by its own popularity, but like a community that is ill-served by as popular a movie as this was, that it became so popular. I remember I was listening to a comedian I like who was also diabetic, Ed Gamble. He was not complaining about Steel Magnolias, but he was complaining about Con Air. I feel like we should, which also has a diabetic character in it, who slips into diabetic shock at one point on the titular flight. And his problem is that he doesn't have enough insulin. And so, or wait, what is it? Actually, he goes into the same problem that she has, which is he has not eaten in a while, and he starts to have too much insulin in his system. And the movie, knowing nothing about how diabetics work, gives him more insulin, and Ed Gamble would like to let everyone know that would kill him immediately. But so movies, even, a movie like Con Air that came out almost 10 years after this, don't have a good track record with a very common chronic disease like diabetes, not getting the facts very right. But I mean, this
and
just
I'm sure I'm
seems like
stumbling over it as well, because I'm not considering myself like super well educated.
Both of us produce insulin as expected. So
we were lucky enough to have not have to worry about that at this current moment.
I don't want to brag, but my body produces insulin. Although, I mean, I did get the vibe while I was watching that first scene that Shelby just kept talking in a way almost like the antithesis of the old weathered cop in an action movie who just keeps telling us how many days he is from retirement. Shelby sometimes
just loves being alive.
She loves life. She loves living it. She's looking forward to having plenty of babies. She's looking forward to getting married and spending her old age years with Dylan McDermott. And it's like, pump the brakes, Shelby. Let's just see how this all turns out 90 minutes from now.
Can't wait to never drink juice again.
My only note is I love living forever. Also, I don't want to get into too granular a detail, but were you as concerned, because the first segment of this movie takes place at Easter, and Daryl Hannah's helping Truvy with some Easter eggs she had dyed, and she's carrying these Easter eggs. They're like 24 cartons that she keeps carrying out, and she's putting them in Truvy's car, and she's just stacking them up on top of each other, so they're about like
they were in egg cartons though. Those stack.
No, they were, but I mean, she just stacked them on top of each other. They were very much outside of the trunk, like they were stacked so high, they were like at eye level at the very top. Yeah. And my only note was like, "What's the plan with these eggs here, Daryl?" Yeah, because I was like, "Are you going to like move some to the ground and then push them back? Like, what's the plan?" Yeah, it seemed definitely set up for exactly what happens, which is someone accidentally slams the trunk on top of them, and all the eggs are ruined.
They ruined. I kind of forgot that. Like, we always had those plastic eggs that you had candy in, and so
those were our hiding eggs.
I forgot that. Like, it's actually the tradition was you have like hard-boiled eggs.
Wait, did you not dye any eggs? Because we did both.
We would dye. Yeah, we would dye eggs, but like, why would you bring pre-dyed eggs? Those are for hiding, right? Like, why else would they bring them?
Oh, somewhere? See, we hid the plastic eggs, and the hard-boiled eggs were for cracking at the Easter dinner. Did you ever play the egg cracking game?
No.
So Harry Xanthopoulos would take an egg in his fist, and hold it so that just at the bottom of the fist, just the tiniest little glimpse of the bottom of the egg was visible. Yeah. Then you took your egg, and so that the tiniest little glimpse of the top of the egg was visible, and he would crack it on top of yours. And it's almost like the wishbone, like whoever's egg gave first is the loser. And then, you know, you have bragging rights or whatever the fuck. I don't know. And then I think Jesus comes back. I wasn't really clear on that portion of Luke.
I was assuming that it was like guess which one is just a raw egg game, which sounds pretty messed
That would be
up.
A punishment for both the loser and the winner. We'd both be covered in raw egg.
All right, so we talk about racism or Weezer next.
You know,
I don't know.
Put it on my tombstone is what I request. That whole sentence. Should we talk about racism or Weezer next? Let's talk about racism, because race doesn't come into this movie ever explicitly, but it does feel like a Paula Deen family Christmas throughout this whole thing. Like it feels like a Paula Deen wet dream, like it's during some of these scenes.
It's not like they speak about the issue at all of racism, but everyone like in the wedding is white. Everyone at the Easter festivities is white, and many of the people serving those people are people of color. So
I think you just summed up American history in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's like whenever we do gigs sometimes at country clubs, and it's always just like, it doesn't say whites only anywhere anymore. I'm sure it did at one point. But you'll notice, especially in certain areas of the country, you'll go and like everyone there in the crowd or that's like around in the management is usually white, and then everyone who like actually works there is a person of color, and you're always just like, this is I don't really know what to do about this in this moment, but this is not it's not the best look, and to put it mildly.
Now, when you talk about in some parts of the country, I'm assuming you mean in the South, you know, some places have black people as the help, or they don't seem to have any black members. I'm assuming in the North, you're talking that there are no Irishmen in the country clubs.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think it's just like, obviously, racism is an issue everywhere.
No, yeah, absolutely. What I also meant was the North was also terribly racist.
Yes, of course, and still is, and it's just like, it's delineated in a very obvious fashion still in many parts of the South. Not everywhere. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make huge...
Don't apologize for the South.
Yeah, it's just like, well, you know, I'm sure people can get defensive about that, but it's just like...
Oh, I'd hate to offend the Southern whites.
Right.
No, I know what you meant. There were a lot of times, but you would see, you know, Melinda and her family walking around like getting things set up, and then you would see, you know, all the caterers, I assume, in the kitchen were black women for the most part, from what I saw. Yeah, it was very obvious. And I mean, I mentioned Paula Deen, but it reminded me of the shit she got canceled. Trademark, which was like her weird imagining of a plantation-style wedding. Yeah. And it's almost like, why did you even have to imagine this? This is a Southern wedding. This is how they're set up. Right. But yeah, it was very much, and it was very unnerving. And it was also, I couldn't tell if it was like, this is just how the movie was set up, or if they were like, I don't think they were ever trying to make a commentary about it, but no, if almost not. It was like, oh yeah, Southern people, this is how their wedding would be set up.
They were, I will say,
because it seems so obvious to me, but maybe it wouldn't be so obvious to eyes of 1989, and by eyes I mean white people's eyes of 1989.
Well, and they were, I think, you know, the playwright / screenwriter / director were more concerned with the men versus women dynamic. That was what they were drawing attention to subtly,
but still
and
drawing. I mean, made a conscious choice to only cast black women as the women.
Yeah, I think
the cooking in the wedding scene.
Well, and I think it's like that's how you get that thing where you're like, I can only do one of these at a time. You know what I mean? We're like, we're being, I guess, somewhat more egalitarian because we're saying like, see, women are strong. And men are idiots, which is like, okay, yeah, I'm down for that message. But also we can just be sort of like quietly, systemically within the movie racist, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I understand the logic of like, well, this isn't what this movie's about, but you cast exclusively black women to be the sort of help in this scene, despite the movie being filmed and presumably set in 1989.
Right.
I don't know. It's just one of those moments where
at the very beginning of this movie, I couldn't remember where it was set because Nell has a very like throwback 60s look to her. Like she's got the sharp pointy glasses. And
she's got the cat's eye glasses.
And then like it wasn't until I saw the first car that was like clearly a blocky 80s car, like a Tercel or something.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like, oh, okay, this is modern times or,
What's that, a Grand Prix?
Present day for when this movie came out. Yeah, but it was just like, oh, is this going to be in the 60s? Because, okay. But
no, I think she is deliberately a throwback for 89, but she almost looks like a hipster now,
right?
Because she's such a throwback at the time that it's almost distracting. She actually lapped herself and seems cool again,
right?
By the time you see her now. Here's another thing that bothered me, and this I almost turned the movie off, and I'm sure it caught your eyes as well because it was such an egregious thing to leave in the movie. But did you see Sally Field measuring sugar in a liquid cup measure? And get the fuck out of here!
And cracking like 12 eggs without straight into the big pot. What is she making?
Egg soup. She's egg soup.
Cracking eggs straight into a large stock pot and then measuring sugar with a liquid cup, which, okay.
And then she was like holding it up to her eye. I'm like, just use a dry cup measure. You don't have to do this weird stuff.
Maybe she had used it. It was dirty. So she did the next best thing.
Here's something I also wanted to bring up. This is more of a goof, to use the terminology of IMDb. Louisiana, I don't think I've spent much time in Louisiana, but the leaves, deciduous trees still drop their leaves around Christmas time, correct?
I don't know.
I mean, I lived in Texas, and they still drop their leaves. There's a scene where Nell and her boyfriend at the time, Bobby, are decorating Truvy's beauty spot for Christmas, and boy, it's a
verdant
Christmas. Every sycamore still got its leaves. It was just so distracting. And it's one of those things that always reminds me of like Hallmark movies where they're obviously like filmed in June.
They shot it in like 14 days. And
they're always like, fuck it, just put some cotton on the ground for snow. Who cares?
And the viewers are like, not us.
Thanks. I'm stoned out of my mind. I'm just watching this for a laugh. Who gives a shit? I also am reminded of like Great British Bake Off. They always have a Christmas special, but they obviously film it in August. And so they put as many lights on the tent as they can, but you can still see these like hyper green, like offensively green trees behind them. Like, come on, we've all lived through a Christmas above the equator. We all know what's going on here.
I want to talk about Weezer.
Ooh, I do want to talk about Weezer, yes.
Shirley MacLaine comes in as such a like, I don't think even without her that this movie is just awful or something like that. But she's such like it's a tour de force performance, and she's such a breath of fresh air. The character comes in, she's just like a whirlwind of like grumpiness, of hilarious grumpiness, and the way that her relationship with these women still evolves into like a very loving, while still never saying really a kind word to anyone. But you can tell it's just like, and you know, there are people like that, and you can tell that they love each other, and at the same time, she has almost all of the greatest lines, and she has the best delivery of all of them. And I knew like if you had said the word Weezer, I would have been like, oh yeah. But I didn't remember any of this. But Shirley MacLaine is incredible in this. She's just so good.
She is. I think she is why I like this movie as much as I do. She is very funny. She's able to like deliver those lines. She's able to sort of cut through sort of the saccharine elements of this movie a little bit. Her and Clary, I think both, but much more her, are able to cut through that a little bit. She also has a kind of a sweet relationship with Chloe, with Olympia Dukakis' character, which it feels like, again, because those scenes for the most part do not happen in the beauty salon, makes me feel like they are not part of the original play.
Right.
That they do sort of flesh out their relationship a little bit better.
Totally works. It makes sense. They're the same generation. They're the older women of this group.
But they also have they're both on opposite sides of a spectrum, whatever spectrum that is. I don't know, grumpiness and just weird cheerfulness.
Right.
But Chloe has that plantation owning Mae West vibe. But Ouisa, she is sort of a stick in the mud, and she doesn't want to get too close to anyone. But you also can tell she does care about these people and shows it in her own way. There's a few moments, and I say this as a person who oftentimes will say something very cynical and curt, and then realize, oh, I just sound like an asshole. I think I sound very charming, but I just sound like an asshole. And there is a scene where Ouisa, she makes a joke that because she's a Southern women just do three things. I don't remember what the first two are, and the other one is grow tomatoes that they won't use. And so she's just like getting rid of tomatoes she's grown to all the women in the beauty shop. And she says, the sooner my body goes out, the better. And that's when they realize that Shelby's on dialysis, and she immediately regrets, like, I shouldn't have said I'm waiting for my body to go out, which definitely feels like a Damon moment where, I had too many gin and tonics and I said something mean. She's absolutely amazing. I'm also amazed because, again, there are no men in the original play, but her and Tom Skerritt's relationship is so fun. It's only comes up in like fits and spurts. Don't say spurts. And they're just like so charming. They're so charming together. Like he'll slap her on the butt in a playful way, and it's just to get on her nerves because she's mad that he's been shooting guns into these trees. And you can already tell, like, they already have, like, animosity towards each other because they reference a fight over a magnolia tree that may be on the border of their two homes, their property line. So they already have animosity. But, he's firing guns in the trees, just stressing her dog out. He's losing his hair. But also that doesn't carry over to Malin. Like, there's an understanding with Ouisa, like, this has nothing to do with Malin. This is me and Tom Skerritt's problem. Yeah. She's amazing. Yes, she is amazing. And there's this great scene with her, a very brief moment with her and Chloe again, where they're leaving the Christmas party at Malin's, and Ouisa's like, can you walk me home? And Chloe's like, you live right over there. And she's like, you've seen the news today. Walk me home. And that's when they get the line, the older you get, the sillier you get. And then Ouisa says, the older you get, the uglier you get. Just mean.
Do you ever wish, as someone who used to smoke, do you ever wish that you could take it back up just so you could use a holder, like a cigarette holder, like Ouisa does in this?
DJ, I can't tell if this speaks ill of our friendship or greatly of our friendship that you think I never had a cigarette holder that I would smoke cigarettes out at parties. Have a hugely long cigarette holder, Cruella de Vil length, smoking out of a cigarette holder like a fucking lunatic. I was one step away from getting a pipe. Like, it's deranged what I was doing with my cigarettes.
I knew you when you smoked, though, and you never busted that out. Were you
no. Well, even when I graduated college, I was like, I can't do that.
That's like me with fedoras. It was a phase. I've moved on. I recognize that it was a mistake, but cigarette
it happens to the best of us. Cigarette holders and fedoras happen to the best of us. Together, though, you can be shot on sight in some states.
You can't do those both at the same time.
But no, there was a little bit of Ouisa smoking. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes when I see the right person smoking, I'm like, smoking. What have you been up to recently? And they're like, and smoking's like going up in price, so act now before I'm too much.
Do you have more to say about the men in this movie, or have we kind of covered it?
I mean, Tom Skerritt is the only real. Well, actually,
you got the brothers.
That isn't true. You have the brothers husband. Who are almost like they could be just the Andy and Ollie from Bob's Burgers, from all I know. They're just like little twerps, I guess,
Dolly's
for lack of a better word. Dolly's husband, I was going to say, who's played by playwright Sam Shepard. He's almost like. There was part of me that was like, this guy's a dick. And there was also part of me that was like, this guy's suffering from depression, Dolly. And I feel like you need to help him find help.
Yeah.
Because there are a few times where you get the impression that he was a lot more active when they were younger.
Right.
And there's a sad scene like during the Christmas portion of this where she comes home, she brought fried chicken from, I don't know, some Louisiana nonsense that they were at. She brings home fried chicken and she wants to go drive around the neighborhood and look at the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to do that. And she's like, we always do that. And he's like, well, I'm fine right here. And it's like, it's not like in a way that where I'm like, oh my God, Dolly, get out of this relationship. But it's like, I think he reminded me of like depression is what it reminded me of just like, I don't have interest in things I used to have interest in. And I just want to sit here and watch the game. And I know she hints at that maybe he works in construction and he's not getting the work that he
works
used to.
An oil rig at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he pops in. There was also Dolly has a son. Dolly and what is Stud? What is his name?
Spud. Yeah.
Jesus. Dolly and Spud, her husband, have a son. He only pops up so infrequently that I kept forgetting about him.
Yeah.
And he seems like
weird.
an asshole.
Yeah.
He's like kind of a punk. Like he drives around on a motorcycle. He has blue hair, I think, at the start of the show. And he like says a bad word he says a bad thing about Daryl Hannah's character. Yeah. He's like, why'd you hire her? Almost like, because she's replacing a woman named Judy that we never see. Right. And it was almost like, did you have a thing with Judy? Well, why are you so upset about this?
Yeah.
And then later he pops in at the very end and sort of when Daryl Hannah's character is giving birth, Bobby, her boyfriend or husband or whatever, he hops on the back of this guy's motorcycle to go to the hospital. But he's so infrequently used that I just keep forgetting. And he also seems, I mean, I know that Dolly's had plastic surgery and all that, but it's hard to, that makes it hard to gauge like what age she's supposed to be in this movie. So when her son pops out and he's like, I don't know, 23, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Her son.
I think when Dolly comes back from Shelby's funeral or something, he's like, says something like, I don't know what I would do if I lost you. Like,
I think that's when they're about to head out to the funeral, but I think he's sitting in the salon chairs and he's playing with the wax,
which is like
the leg wax
such a like emotionally abusive thing. He gives her like the tiniest sliver of a lovely thing, and just like, you're supposed to just like cherish that, and it's like, fuck you, dude. Like,
so you were on the opposite end of like, it's not depression, he's just an asshole.
I mean, it could be either. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Like, I'm not mad about I think the point of this is like, this is a story about the women and the men are almost cartoonishly useless. And I think that's great. Like, that's cool. That's like the theme of I'm not like offended as a man or anything like that. But I do think it's like a little bit, why are they even in this? You know what I mean? And I think it was just, they wanted to, I guess, flesh out some of the stuff from the play. But it was just kind of like, these men are useless. The characters are useless. And also, I don't think they add anything by showing, other than Tom's character, which was also like some fun comic relief. And the brothers are kind of fun too. But I didn't get much out of any other men, including like Nell's. I didn't kind of understand why we were talking about that.
They have sort of a love story, but because the story jumps around so many in such like time bursts that we don't really get to sort of follow their love story. We just see them sort of almost in vignettes of like different stages of their relationship. Yeah, I think I'm on your side. As much as I'd hate to lose Tom Skerritt's character, who adds like a really chaotic good element to this movie.
Very Caddyshack vibe.
Yeah, there is part of me that thinks like, you could probably do without the men in this, just like in this stage play. Like, it might make it a little more awkward in a movie like this, rather than in a play where you can have things happening off stage much more believably in a play than you can in a movie, where I feel like in a movie it might start to come off as like Maris and Frasier. It's like, why are you deliberately not showing this person to me? But there is a part of me that thinks the men aren't necessarily useful. You do get a little bit more from Tom Skerritt because we see him, of course, at Shelby's sickness and death. But every other man is almost completely waste of space. As much as I appreciate they got Sam Shepard for this, it seems why? It seems weird.
And then we get Sally Field really takes over like the third act of this movie. Like, it becomes like her, like really centered around Melinda's grief, dealing with Shelby's coma and then eventual death. And then like we get her at first. So I knew there was this big I don't know if it's just like from memory or there's like, I feel like this is a thing people know about, which is the cemetery scene, like Sally Field's cemetery scene is like famous, at least in my mind. I don't know if it actually is like, and I forgot about like what exactly it was about the cemetery scene at first. And she does a really good job. Like I knew she had like some big scene later and she's sitting at Shelby's side in the hospital and she's doing a great performance. But I was like, oh, is this what it was? And then they have the funeral and she's kind of like has this like smaller monologue by the gravesite. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was good. But then she has her actual scene, which is she's like, no, fuck this. And then has this amazing monologue that is like, oh, okay, this is what we were talking about. And she goes on this just amazing monologue about, you know, how it's unfair and the grief and all that. And it's fucking amazing. But I think that it totally makes up for, I don't think she was my favorite, like in the early parts, and not just the character, but just like, I wasn't like totally buying in to Malin, I think, or her performance as Malin until we get there, like her dealing with the grief of losing her daughter. And then like, it kind of made all the earlier parts of her like overprotectiveness like click in for me. I didn't do it, but it almost made me want to watch it again.
Right.
Like with that in mind.
She works for me very much so. I don't know if she reminds me of like friends' moms when I was growing up.
Reminds me a lot of my mom.
That sort of almost helicopter parent while also like sort of maintaining a sort of emotional distance, I think a little bit. Like she has a very physical closeness with Shelby, like always like sort of watching out and making sure she doesn't do something that might affect her health. And almost like there's a really good scene, I think, with her and Julia Roberts. The egg scene, the egg and the egregious sugar in a liquid cup measure scene. So I hope someone was fired for that egregious mistake. But they have a good heart-to-heart moment where this is when Shelby reveals that she's pregnant, and Sally Field is very upset because she knows that the doctor said she shouldn't get pregnant.
Right.
She should avoid getting pregnant. And Julia Roberts has one of the more famous lines from this where, you know, I'd rather have, 30 minutes of, what does she say? 30 minutes of wonderful than a lifetime of nothing special. Which is a little bit maudlin when I say it in my voice, but I feel like it works really well, at least in terms of these women saying those things, like these women living in that moment. And I think it just reveals the breadth between these two characters where Malin wants Shelby to live forever, essentially. And Shelby's saying, I don't necessarily want to live forever if I don't get to do the things I've always wanted to do. So I'm going to take this risk and have this baby. And if I die, I die, is essentially what she's saying.
And wouldn't you, Malin, give anything, for the opportunity to be
Shelby.
my mother? Yeah, which of course she would,
And that plays into the speech that Malin gives at the end, which is, I'm going to have to spend my life telling this child how wonderful his mother is. And what she says, I can run to Texas and back, but she can't because she's dead. And that was a choice that Shelby made, even if it wasn't conscious. In the back of her head, she knew that she was taking a risk by having this baby. And, it's almost cliche, of course, to have a funeral scene where someone's like, I'm mad at God. But she does a really good job of having that I'm mad at God scene without ever really saying I'm mad at God. But she screams, I want to know why. And she just screams at the top of her lungs. And Sally Field's great. I love Sally Field. I can't help it. It's why we named that special award that she gets.
Will she win?
Who knows? Stay tuned. She does a great job in what could be a very cliched monologue, and she sells it really well. And of course, Clary vamping all over the place. Wah, 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 punch, Weezer. And of course, Weezer, who is dressed almost like Fred Flintstone's mother-in-law at this funeral. She also does a great job too. Of course, these two comic relief characters, and they get a smile on Clary's face. That funeral scene is a really good scene.
Yeah.
I really can't help but to be won over by it and to cry during it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that must have been what I remember, which is watching my aunt and my mom just bawling. It had to have been that scene. Because, I mean, there's a lot of
hands down. It's either that or, I mean,
in the hospital, I guess, was
the
also
hospital's rough, but I think that, like, that funeral scene is like this explosion of emotion that has been like curtailed by Sally Field throughout the movie. So I feel like it would have to be that funeral scene.
Yeah.
I have a note here. Can you jog my memory here? It's just it's a quote between two people, one of which is Weezer. But the quote is, "Weezer, what are you doing here?" And the response from Weezer is, "Shut up." Do you remember when that happens in it?
No.
I loved it because you expected like there would be like this really clever retort from Weezer, and her response is, "Shut up." I also, there is sort of a cute bridal shower scene with Nell, with Darren's character.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Who's saying
what'd
it?
you say?
Is it Tom Skerritt?
No, it's Clary.
Of course.
The
female Tom Skerritt.
Is this what you're talking about? Because this is when they're in the locker room. And Clary's like, but I love the top, such a vibrant purple. Bob, what do you call this color, grape or aubergine? Shut up.
No, that is also good. You know, you look like a fool out there. I can't remember what this is from, but I wrote it down because it made me laugh so much. I also laughed at the bridal shower scene with Nell during her bridal shower when they're buying her a bunch of, gifts that you usually get at a bridal shower. And she gets like this crotchless lingerie, crotchless teddy or something. And they look at the card, and Clary turns to Weezer and says, "You have the handwriting of a serial killer." I do declare, Mr. Rat. I
do not see plays because I can nap at home for free. I don't read books because if they're any good, they're going to make them into a mini series. That's so good.
Oh, she's amazing. I wanted to say, I'm not a financial analyst, but I'm concerned that Truvy's going to be a chain, and she only has 5 customers from what I can gather.
I don't think she needs a second location. Also, like, did he just make a sign and rent a building, or did he, like, make a bunch of decisions about how her store is going to be set up without her? Because that's kind of fucked up.
It's like, one of those moments where it seems really sweet, but I'm like, there's a lot of things here that are. It even says now open on it. So, like, is she having to staff this suddenly?
It's like if I opened like a store to sell your art without consulting you. You'd be like, "Hey, what's the deal with this? Thank you for the gesture, but
thank you for buying this property and I guess renting it out, hopefully for a few months." Because I haven't also to staff this up.
They're sharing finances. Like, she's gonna know how much this cost. Does she know? It's not like there was probably. She's always wanted a second location, but probably the reason that she didn't was because the demand didn't call for it.
Right. Also, one more thing on the just a logistical level. When Dylan McDermott comes home, when Shelby has slipped into her coma, we see there is spaghetti sauce boiling over on the stovetop. The refrigerator door is open. Several chairs are open. And then we find Shelby on the porch. And I'm like, what were you doing on the way out, Shelb? Like, she opened everything and knocked every chair over just to slip into a coma. And we already knew that she fell down on the back porch.
We saw her, on the back porch, and
maybe she's just a terrible, terrible person who's just leaving the refrigerator door open at all times.
Maybe she forgot in her situation. Maybe she forgot where the phone was, and so
maybe it's in the fridge.
She took the scenic route to the phone.
Took a chair down with her. All right, we can go to our verdict.
Let's do
now that we've mocked a diabetic.
Damon, what is your verdict?
DJ, there's a lot of there's some problematic stuff in this Steel Magnolias, in this movie about Southern white women. Who would have seen it coming? What? But I will say your inner child is not an idiot. I really enjoyed this. It's got a lot of some good performances in it. A lot of funny lines, mostly from Olympia and Shirley MacLaine and Tom Skerritt. Throw them in there. Finally, men get their due.
Finally.
Ugh. This cancel culture is out of control. Anyway, yes, I enjoyed this movie very much, despite some of its more dated aspects, some of its odd depictions of diabetic medical needs, and some of the unspoken background racial dynamics that are much more troubling to 2021 eyes.
I don't want to step on your verdict, but
how dare you?
May I nominate?
Ah, yes, please.
2 awards.
Please, I welcome it. Shirley
MacLaine for the Catherine O'Hara Memorial MVP Award.
Seconded.
And then, of
course,
get it
stamped out, Roger, and get that mailed out to Mrs. MacLaine Beatty.
And then
Warren Beatty's sister. Do you know that? It's one of my favorite little bits of trivia.
I did know that, but when I found that out not long ago, I was very surprised. And when you see it, you're like, okay.
I kind of get it.
Yeah. Just a hardscrabble, riches to riches story for that family.
From the Ned Beatty fortune, he went back in time and sired 2 children.
And of course, Sally Field. I'd like to nominate Sally Field for the Sally Field Individual Scene Award. Is that what we call it?
And not just because if we don't nominate her, she would sue us.
Yes. And she does, I mean, like, she never, it's not like she's bad in other scenes, but like this, just like the reason why this award exists, her one scene in Mrs. Doubtfire, is like heads and shoulders above everything else that she does in this movie. And
she's very good at selling, like, sort of when you're overcome with emotions. Yeah, you're overcome with emotions and you can't really quite get the words out, so you just like start just blathering on. She's really good at that. She does it really well in Mrs. Doubtfire, of course. She does it really well here. She, of course, does it really well in the transphobic soap dish. She's great.
Your Inner Child is not an idiot. So he's great. It's not without problems. It's not without flaw. We talked about it, but I was expecting to maybe think this was a little bit cheesy and be kind of borderline, and it is certainly cheesy, but it is great, and it made me cry, and I laughed a lot, mostly at Shirley MacLaine's performance. Dolly Parton's National Treasure. It's great. A lot of, like, it is a stacked cast. Like, that is,
it is surprisingly stacked, and I'm trying to think, like,
talking about like their boobs. Not just because of Dolly.
What a thing to say! You always do comment about Shirley MacLaine's boobs.
Excuse me. Men are talking.
It is a stacked cast, but it also, I think you also have to account for the fact that Daryl Hannah and Julia Roberts were not necessarily as big a thing as they were.
Wasn't Daryl Hannah by this point? This is post
Daryl Hannah might have been more of a thing than Julia Roberts at this point.
This is Pretty Woman, because it was Pretty Woman was 1990, right?
Pretty Woman.
So that was her like huge breakout, right? I mean, this was big.
T Woman. DJ, did you? I don't know. I want to make sure that there's a clean version of this. Pre T Woman. Pre.
Do I look like I'm frozen? I'm trying to pretend like I'm frozen.
Pre T Woman. Deej. Pre T Woman.
What do you think, everyone? Your Inner Child is an Idiot at gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail or text us 615-576-0525. If you want to become a supporter of the show, patreon.com/Your Inner Child is an Idiot. We want to thank our current patrons, including Heather Tuggle,
the supreme ruler of this podcast,
Tyler Richardson,
Captain Jean-Luc Picard,
Karen Kurd,
Lindsey Nell,
Jonathon Day,
Just Cuz,
The Zesty,
Jacob Grimm,
Particle Man,
Demons Australian accent,
Dramatically Placed Hot Dog,
Larissa Maestro,
T. Smith,
Jeremy Powlen,
Kevin from the Cleveland.
You know, I'm just realizing we should have done these all in Southern accents.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can finish them off that way.
Oh, well, I do declare, Brandon Hardy.
His Honor, the Mayor.
Oh, Diane McIntyre.
And Justin Shea. Sorry, I ran out of Southern accent.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry. I mean, it's an unrenewable resource, so we probably shouldn't have just cruised through it like that.
Thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate your help. If you want to support the show like them, patreon.com/Your Inner Child is an Idiot. You know what? Have you ever had like a crawfish boil? Like a low country boil?
This has come up like 16 times since we've watched Steel Magnolias. I have had crawfish Well, no, in my life. Me and Tyler have talked about it. Then I talked about it with, I think, Adam, and I think I've talked about it with a few other people. It's lunacy. To answer your question, I have had crawfish, but I have never had like the crawfish boil.
So mad about this question.
That is my default, and I am not mean. I've just been in a bad mood for the past 40 years.
We had one when we were in New Orleans, and it was delicious. It was very messy.
Oh, messy?
Because it's like everything's just sort of dumped out, and then you just eat with your hands, and it's like, it's been boiled. So it's
like
all like
potatoes
wet.
and